This horror film is even more terrifying when you realize it's based on an actual horrifying mass murder. This one's gonna have you double, triple, quadruple checking that you've locked your doors. It was the late 70s in Springfield, Massachusetts. Glenna Sharp, known as Sue, was about to make a big move. She had a pretty big family. She had her husband James and her 5 children. Now these ranged from the ages of 15 to 5. She very much had her hands full. These were Johnny, Sheila, Tina, Ricky and Greg. And she was a really good mum and she would do anything to protect her children, including leaving her husband. She found out he was SAing their own daughters and she was like, I am gone. She wanted to start a new life for her and her kids in a beautiful new place, and after trialing a few different areas, she decided they'd settle in Keddie in California. And they lived in this cute little wooden cabin. Now, it wasn't much, but it was home. It was certainly a squeeze though. But everything changed on the night of the 11th of April 1981. Now, Sue's 14-year-old daughter Sheila had gone round to the neighbour's house for a sleepover. She had no idea she'd return home to an absolute bloodbath. At around 10 a.m, Sheila was like, right, I'll get going now, I'll go home, I need to change my clothes before I go to church. And she was thinking, my mum is going to be wondering where I am soon. Her mum was not wondering where she was. Her mum was lying dead in a pool of her own blood. Now, when Sheila walked in, she stopped dead in her tracks. It was eerily silent, and in front of her were the dead bodies of her mum, her brother John, and her brother John's friend Dana, who'd been staying over that night. They were bound and gagged, strangled, beaten, and stabbed. A scene that Sheila had only before witnessed in horror films. Suddenly she heard screaming, and then in her confused state she realised it was her that was screaming. In an absolute panic she ran shaking to the neighbour's house. She got help and they were like, what the hell is she talking about? Suddenly it started dawning on them, if there's 3 dead bodies here, where is everybody else from the house? Is there more dead bodies? Is anyone hiding? Is the attacker still inside? So shaking, Sheila and her friend Jamie ran back around to the cabin and had a little look. They were peering through the windows, trying to see if there was any sign of life inside. And they never expected what they saw in one of the bedrooms. Lying peacefully asleep were the 3 younger children. Now this was Rick, Greg and a friend Justin who was staying over. By this point police were already racing round over to the scene, and neighbours encouraged the young children to actually climb out of the window rather than go past all of the dead bodies. So you've got the 3 victims here, you've also got the 3 that have survived. So where was Tina? The 12-year-old was nowhere to be seen, and only one of the neighbours actually recalled hearing anything that night. It was kind of like muffled screaming, but they didn't know whether it was just a joke or not. How does this huge bloody murder scene unfold and pretty much nobody hears a single thing? How did those 3 children sleep through it? At first it was thought that Tina was kidnapped and potentially she could be alive somewhere and tell us something. But heartbreakingly, 3 years after the massacre, her skull was found discarded in Butte County. In my mind, the first obvious suspect is the ex-husband James. He clearly had a motive for revenge, and the police agreed. But he had a confirmed alibi, so officers needed to look elsewhere. So Justin, the little boy that had been staying over the night, said to detectives he'd had a really bad nightmare that night. He wasn't really sure whether it was real or whether it was just in his sleep. They got him to describe what he saw that night, and they came up with a sketch of 2 people that he had reportedly dreamt about. One looked eerily like his own stepdad, Martin Smart. And Martin was known to not be a nice guy at all. He was abusive, and apparently Sue was friends with his wife, and Sue had been kind of coaching her and saying like, look, I've left my abusive husband, I'm happy now, you can do the same. So was this an act of revenge from Martin? He was known to have this beef with Sue. Some people think he was to blame, and he certainly acted a bit dodgy after the murders. He actually fled to Nevada, and several people said that he admitted to them that he killed this family. And word on the street was also that Martin was friends with someone in the police department, so some people think this was a huge cover-up. Call me paranoid, but I think maybe this is something to do with why this case is chillingly unsolved to this day. And maybe it's just me, but the horror film The Strangers now feels so much more chilling and eerie to me, knowing that it's based around cases like this.